order. The meeting is for November 15th, 2017. It's about 5:03. I'd like to call for a roll call, please.
Orstein? Here. Meg? Here. Scylla? Here. Gaffney?
Here.
Kelly?
Here. And I'd like to ask everyone to please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to ask for approval of the agenda, but before we do that, I'd like to move item number 9 to after agenda item number 11, 12, because we're going to have to reconvene as a sanitary district. So that's to keep everything
9 to 12.
9 to after 12. 12A.
And I can answer a question about what the purpose of that might be, which is that the bond council will be here at 6:30.
Okay.
So we've asked the bond team to come at 6:30 so they don't have to participate in the entire evening's agenda.
I second.
Okay, do I have a second? Very good, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. With that, I'd like to offer open time for public to raise items not on the agenda for future open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agenda item requests. Members of the public may address the board on issues that are within the sanitary district's jurisdiction, but the board can't hold any discussions on these at the time. Do I have any public requests for open time or future agenda items? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a committee report standing out, and ran the Finance Committee report out.
Yes. Okay, the Finance Committee, consisting of Doug and myself, met. We reviewed all the bond issue documents. I had a number of points on those. We did review the interim financial report and the quarterly financial report, which are on our agenda items as well. We didn't have any major comments. We did have a number of comments on the policies.
Yeah,
the policies one. That's an agenda item. And then we heard a report on the fiscal year fiscal audit and comprehensive on the CAFR. So we really went through a lot of items that we're going to go through again today. And looked at the monthly capital report and the legal services report.
And we saw the legal services are back down.
Okay.
Very pleased about that. Okay. Mike, do you want to do Central Marin Sanitation?
Sure. We had the meeting last night, and the NPDES permitting, which CMSA is going through right now, where they wanted us to be on the permit with them, and CMSA got everything they wanted, and Sanitary and RVSD sent letters to the State Water Resources Control Board, and they were supposed to review all that and get back to CMSA at the beginning of December, but they pushed that, I believe, out to January 10th now. So we have no way of arguing or doing anything until they come back with their thoughts and ideas. What they think about that.
And we got more than we wanted. CMSA got all they wanted. We got more than we wanted.
No. They want us to be on the permit, but then we'd rather not be there. We're coming up on labor agreement with CMSA, and they arranged for a 2-year extension, as is with their people. So that's very nice for them, because they don't have to do any negotiation with anything. Yeah. Oh yeah. During the big rains last year, part of the hillside back of CMSA slid down, and somebody over there came up with the the idea that they went in for FEMA support on that, and they actually got quite a bit of going to get paid for. I believe to the tune of the total cost is $37,000, and I think FEMA's going to cover $36,000 of it. So we weren't totally up on the FEMA. Somebody there noticed it, but should we have another one of those events this year where we have hillside falling down like in Fairfax, we should be right on top of that and applying for FEMA aid because they basically got it covered.
The $36,000 was just for emergency repairs. We're going to get about 90, I think it's 93% of the cost of a design for a final repair and 96% of the big construction project. So it's a huge amount.
Yeah. So next time we'll be raring to go on that. They are one of their clarifiers. 1 out of 4 of the clarifiers had some major corrosion problems. So the good news about that is it doesn't seem to be a defect in design because the other 3 are exactly the same age and exactly the same use, and they didn't have any problems. So there was probably a defect in manufacturing down in 1985, and there's probably a pinhole, and effluent went through the pinhole and corroded the pipe around it. So that's been repaired. And those were the big items. They went through the fiscal year financial returns. We had a lovely presentation from this gentleman last night, and there were no comments and no thoughts, and so everything is good.
Yeah, complete audit. I mean, audit.
Clean audit.
Clean, yeah.
Clean audit. So that was CMSA.
Okay. The ad hoc committee for CMSA JPA agreement update, a couple of things. This board authorized me to speak to Larkspur Town Council, and I have done so. They are putting, and the reason is, of course, LAPCO has suggested that Larkspur seat be sunset, if I will, and some members of CMSA and the ad hoc committee don't want to step on anybody's toes, so we were kind of a catch-22 where we couldn't really make a suggestion because nobody wanted to irritate anybody. So I did speak to some members of the Larkspur Town Council. It will be on their next agenda item, and they'll discuss it. And then at that point, we can make some suggestions and decisions, and we'll see where we take it from there. I don't want to prematurely suggest what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do, but at that point, we'll take it from there. That'll be either the next meeting or the one after that. We did have a meeting, and it was on October 26th. We talked about the powers of the CMSA. We did talk about CMSA not being allowed to provide collection services within the district at all, ever, except for the ones that are authorized, which are St. Clement. And not doing any collection services outside without the permission of the members of CMSA, which would be, I believe we said all of the members, so it would be unanimous. So we talked about what it was allowed to authorize, which was wastewater services, but not collection services. To issue bonds with the approval of all of the members. We talked about the members not being able to exit. We clarified the ownership of properties, basically tightened up that portion of the CMSA. There wasn't really an awful lot of that meeting that we did. It was really a matter of kind of tightening up the ownership and the duties that CMSA may do, and the duties they may not do. So I think we were good on that. Both this representative and Senator Fowler were very clear that we didn't want CMSA doing collection services, period. So, same point is past tense.
To issue bonds, does everybody have to agree?
Yes, everyone must agree. Yeah, because we're all indebting ourselves to that, so yes. Okay.
Does it have to be unanimous?
Yes.
I have a question.
Because it could be, 4 to 1 vote.
Yeah, no, it was unanimous. Yes.
So if LAFCO's suggesting annexation with Murray Park and,
San Quentin.
yeah.
Yep.
Would the JPA change that?
No.
Would we have any influence?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And, again, I think this board would be wise to strongly consider those two annexations. The only problem is, I mentioned this before, currently the residents of those areas are paying about half their
To the county.
to the county. And I don't think they're going to be big on that, but I don't think they're pulling their fair share. So I think their numbers are artificially low, and I don't think that's a good idea. So I wouldn't suggest taking them on at their current salary pay rates.
Okay.
Right, it's something that needs to move through the county, and Greg and I met with Katie Rice about
Oh,
it
you did?
so many years ago. It is like almost impossible for me to believe nothing. I don't know, it's an administrative thing. And then you did say that San Quentin, they were permitted to
Well, that was the
collect in
settlement.
San Quentin. Right. We haven't said, I mean, nobody officially permitted them. They started doing it, and then by virtue of refinancing the bond debt service,
I'm not sure that's right. No, I don't
we
know.
didn't
No.
challenge it at that point, and then we decided it was not legally, anyway.
No, I believe that when the Ross Valley Sanitary District settled its lawsuit with CMSA, it was embedded in the settlement.
Okay,
Yes.
great, okay.
I like that word in there.
Yeah. Okay, number 5 is the consent calendar. The matters listed on the consent calendar are routine. However, any member of the board can ask to pull any item out from the consent. But before I do that, does anybody in the public wish to address anything on the consent calendar? You do?
No,
Sir.
but I'm sorry I'm late, and I missed the very beginning when. the
Open
public
time?
has 3
Would you like an
minutes.
open time?
If I may?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so more of a question. So I live.
I'm sorry, can you state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rich Semino. I live in Larkspur, right on Corder Creek in
Sure.
Cape Marin there. And so I live right on the creek, and then there's that cove by Niven Park.
Okay.
And earlier this year, you had put in some concrete vaults and did some new plumbing and so on, just so you sort of have a general
Yep.
vision of it in your mind. There's a large corrugated pipe that I believe runs from Sir Francis Drake underneath the fire department on Berry and Latterman, and then underneath Niven Park, it lets out in that cove and that mud flat. And it's broken maybe about 12 feet up at low tide. It just collapsed, and I don't think anything was able to come out, just a trickle.
Okay.
So the reason why I'm here tonight is sort of like an FYI, sort of give you a heads up.
Absolutely.
And you can really see that low tide, high tide, it's, obviously.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's
Before you, a couple things. One, there is an emergency number. We'd love to have you call that 24 hours a day. Well, you're here, so don't worry about it now. But you can call that 24 hours a day to report anything like that. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, we
Sounds like a storm drain, and we're not responsible for storm drains.
It's not a
Yes.
sewer.
No, if I said sewer, I'm wrong. It's a storm drain.
Okay, and so
We do not take care
it
of
would be the county.
storm drains. But I
Okay,
can-
well, that's good, just so I know, because I want to pursue it. Because this year in March with the big storm events, all that water backed up onto Sir Francis Drake by those 2 gas stations.
That's terrible.
So I should go to the county.
County Public
I-
Works.
I'll help you out there.
Oh, good.
I'll take care
Thank
of
you
it.
for giving me 3 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we.
Thanks a lot, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I would have given her 3 minutes if it was something we didn't want to hear.
Well, that's true,
Yeah.
but it's better if we do that.
That's right. Okay, having said that, would any member of the board wish to pull anything from the consent calendar?
I just have a question
Sure.
about a line item, and it's about our PG&E bill.
Wait a minute, which item are you pulling? We're talking about.
Hold on. Felicia, 5B maybe? Yeah.
Financial statements?
Yes, financial statement.
Yes, sorry.
Page?
5B.
That's another PG&E, then it would be,
Why don't we pull this in a group?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
it's page 2 of 3.
Hold on, we're going to pull that item, and then can I have a motion to approve the rest of the consent calendar?
I move we approve the rest of it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Now let's talk about 5B. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Where's
we're,
the second?
Tom.
I haven't been watching this, but I usually do our PG&E bills. And we're up to
Page,
203 line items.
you mean the checks?
Check register and change in cash report. So I haven't been watching this in the past. I have first line is 72, 73, and 74.
Okay.
We're up to, over 15,000 a month. I'm wondering what else we could do. Have we had a energy saving assessment? Have we tried to figure out ways, I don't know, working at Marin General, it's really, they've done a lot for energy saving, and it's everywhere. I don't know, because I don't hang out down there in the office very much, but also the pump stations. So, and I know we're not deep green, so I wanted to, maybe for future discussion, talk about deep green, because it's all California clean energy now. And some of you, if you drove over the Richmond Bridge recently, there's a massive new solar farm that's been put up there, and that's part of what we would be buying into. So I'm just throwing it out there, and also solar, maybe we should build a carport over our parking lot or our buildings. I've said this for 7 years, but anyway, it seems like a lot of money. I know the pumps have to run 24/7, that's a given. So that's it. No more.
No. There's no carport. That would make
To
sense.
build a carport like Redwood High School has done.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good idea. I think we can at least look into it. I mean, is there solar? There's solar on the roof, though, isn't there? Didn't I see some solar on the roof?
Currently?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
No.
Has an energy, has solar energy been studied for us?
I don't believe we've done a solar feasibility study yet for Kerner, but that is something that we can look into.
CMSA has done one, and it's close.
It's what?
It's close, whether it would be good or not. It takes up a lot of room, and they don't have, maybe we could put it on the roof. It's something that's done. In fact, it's part of our master plan.
What has been discussed in the past, it's been a few years now, is the brownfields over at Chevron allow people to invest. So we can buy into that and not have to maintain the solar panels ourselves.
Yeah, I thought Greg was mentioning that we might invest in
And that was several years ago, and I don't know if it's been addressed since then.
I'll bring it back up.
Well, since we've got that, page 1 of the check register, line 9, the pan-tilt cameras. How many are those, and where are they on the Kerner building?
I'm sorry, what line item?
Check register, line number 9.
Oh, pan and tilt cameras. I'm pretty sure that's for the CCTV van.
Yeah, it's for the sewer inspections.
It's a condition assessment system.
How many cameras were there?
I believe it's just one. I think it's just one. It's 19,000. I think it's just one.
Seems a little high for one.
Is it
Pretty cheap.
And, so, sometimes cell cameras. The system that's not unreasonable for a system. Seems a little high for a camera.
But this is a sewer. It's a
I know, no, I got that, and no, I don't do sewer cameras. Okay, do we have any other questions on consent item 5B?
Well, like equipment, now, do we did that through that state program?
No, we have to, so it's, has to match our TV van, so we have to have the same manufacturer as the.
Anything else on 5B? Can I have a motion?
I move we accept the 5B.
Second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 6 is consideration of accepting the fiscal year 2016-17 financial audit and approval of the comprehensive annual financial reports. And can I have a staff report?
Yes, thank you. So each year, the board is presented with a annual financial audit, and then staff subsequently prepares a comprehensive annual financial report that the board receives at a subsequent meeting. This year, we're presenting both of these items to you in one package. It was a suggestion of our auditor. We have a new auditor this year, Siobhan and Associates. Yes. Management agreed that that would be an efficient format to use, so we're presenting it to you this way this year, and in subsequent years we plan to do that as well. So Paul is here to present the audit to the board, and Paul Phan, if you'd like to give a presentation to our board, and perhaps also if you would explain a bit about what an unmodified opinion of an audit means and no findings. I think that's a particular note this year.
Sure,
Thank
I can
you.
do that. Thank you for inviting me out to present the results of the audit this year. So the audit, basically, we give two opinions in the CAFR here. The first one is going to be the independent auditor's report, which you'll see on page 1. And then we also issue a report on our audit in terms of the standards set by governmental auditing standards on page 63. So both of those were clean opinions, which means they were unmodified in the sense that there were no exceptions noted during our audit. We didn't note any material weaknesses. We didn't have any disagreements with management. And there weren't any significant passed on adjustments. So everything was reported the way it should in all material respects. So if, in terms of our opinion, we look on page 2, what we opined on was that the financial statements within this report and the related notes were presented fairly in all material respects. In all material respects, meaning we couldn't possibly test it 100%. So on a sample basis, that we were able to come to that conclusion. Okay. So our audit was a 2-phase audit. We came out early in the year, did an interim audit where we assessed key controls and we identified key controls that were necessary, to make sure that the financial transactions were properly recorded and that any errors or misstatements that may have happened would be caught in a timely manner. So we assessed that, and then we came back at a second phase of the audit where we did some substantive testing where we actually crunched numbers, looked at it, reconciled, ticked and tied a lot of the financials out. So that's how our audits work. Okay. So any questions on the audit phase
Did you
itself?
sample the checks, the check register? Did you take a sample of those?
We, not in terms of the controls themselves so much, but at year end we did on those examples just to make sure that liabilities were in place, but we didn't look at the controls during the interim time as far as the disbursements. So, was that your question?
Yep.
So usually on an audit, we usually have like an executive summary.
Okay.
And so basically, you're saying we're perfect?
In all material respects, yes. We couldn't possibly look at everything. So in terms of what we sampled and stuff, yes.
So nowhere we can improve.
Well, there's the thing with internal controls and processes. You have to kind of balance the control itself needs to benefit you more than the cost of implementing such a control, because you can always increase controls, but to what cost, right? And so there's that fine balance you have to determine, if it's worth the risk involved in a misstatement.
I don't understand worth the risk.
Well,
Can you explain that a little more?
Sure, for
Example,
example,
maybe?
Yeah, sure. So for example, let's just say Felicia, she could examine every single check that gets dispersed, but on a practical level, it may not be worth that expense, her time to do that. So she may say review batches, right, and look through and approve batches, because there are other controls in place as well that alleviate the risk of a misstatement or misappropriation or things of that sort.
Okay.
So it's
Okay, so my next question is, the state who did our audit 2 years ago, we had some things to clean up.
Yes,
They're all cleaned up?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did take a look at that. We did read the recommendations that were made, and we did address those during our assessment of the controls.
Okay, thank you.
Did you like, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let me do a quick, just summary of financial. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
You said you didn't have any disputes with management. Do you often have ever, is that common?
It's not common, but it happens. Yeah, it's, you guys, Felicia and my team, like I said, they're doing a great job here, so we didn't have any issues arise. But yeah, there are entities out there that, yeah, I would say they don't agree with everything we recommend. So it happens. Well, thankfully not too often, but it does happen.
Good gossip would be accepted.
So I'd like to bring your attention to the MD&A, particularly on page 9. So actually, let me go back a page. On page 8, that's the summary of the district's net position. So you see there, a majority of the assets there you'll see are invested in capital assets, which you would expect for your particular business. And you'll see that your net position increased over last year by $3.7 million. And as far as the capital assets, most of that was an increase in the projects, the construction projects that you guys were working on this year. And so that the change in the net position itself, major part of that was $893,000 increase in your operating revenue, and that was a scheduled increase in the sewer service charges. So from that alone, you're seeing a $904,000 increase. So that's a big part of that piece. And then on the non-operating revenue, you see there's an increase of $587,000, which was mainly from property taxes in terms of increased assessed property values. So overall, in the expenses, you also saw an increase there as well. And a big part of that was in salaries and benefits. And GASB 68, as you guys know from a few years back, that was a big part of the increase there. And keep in mind, it's not actually cash that was paid out in terms of the pension plan. It's an accrual basis accounting. Yep. And so that's a future liability. So it's just an accounting thing. And another piece.
Can you remember how much was cash and how much was non-cash? Because most of that, wasn't it because of the increase, the change in the accounting basis?
That's correct, yeah. Let me refer you to actual contributions themselves. You'll see that on page 47, that there, the pension contributions, so that's 621. Yeah, page 47. So that's the contribution amount. And then in terms of the other piece of your operating expenses, the cause of the increase is the sewer treatment and the debt service charged by CMSA. You guys were expecting that, so that's a big piece of the change there. And in terms of the capital assets, that schedule on page 10 there, you see you guys did have a lot of capital projects going on there. So a lot of new things in terms of sewer lines and improvements and construction projects. Okay. And that's a summary of the financials this year. So
Did you by any chance have a chance to poke through the new proposed sanitary district financial policies book?
It was sent to them.
I think we did.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was how new were we talking about? The ones you provided were the
Yes.
newer ones? Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, we did.
Okay. Do you particularly remember or have anything about that?
I'd have to check, but if it's the copy we got and looked at, yes, it was properly designed, and we did do walkthroughs and stuff with Julie and saw that they were being implemented and applied properly.
We had some comments at the Finance Committee, nibs and naps and things. Are they going to get corrected?
Julie's going to take care of that tomorrow, yeah. After the board accepts the document tonight
Okay.
and makes any other mids and mats, then the document will be updated tomorrow.
Okay, then do we need
You
to
wanna
go
touch
over?
on that?
Material nips and naps?
No, they're not too material, but they're, you know,
You
they're just.
could
little
review them,
corrections.
Tom, if you'd like. I think refunded revenue bonds on page
Page
11.
11, you know, they're titled, the long-term obligation refunding revenue bonds, and they're not refunding revenue bonds. We have one refunding and we have one regular, so it should be called revenue bonds. And then the same thing on page 40, and then there was a will be, and I changed it to a word, that was a past tense in the first written paragraph on page 40. The proceeds of the bonds were used, because
Right.
they were the old ones.
Yes, we.
And a revenue bond. Somebody's got to read this.
Believe me, I'm glad we have you. I really
And I
appreciate
think
it.
those were, anyway, you know, it's things like that.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
great.
so with corrections.
Yeah, I'll make those changes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let me see what else there was. Oh, yeah, you know, on the connection charge of the supplemental information, it puts down the old connection fee as $50, and it was $50 per plumbing fixture unit.
It was $50, I'm sorry, per,
Per plumbing fixture unit.
oh, per plumbing fixture
Yeah,
unit?
so
Okay.
that needs to be corrected.
Which schedule is it?
Yeah, what is that?
Well, you know, it's
They
a
should have
schedule
asked
of
something at the bottom of that.
historic and current fees and rates. It was a supplemental information. It doesn't have a table.
It should have asked something.
Right by
Yeah,
your
it'd be
middle
like, it'd be
ring,
like S6.
your binder ring.
S6.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, I see it, yeah, S6. And S13, didn't we budget 35 employees this year?
Yes.
S13.
Yeah, that's actually looking at fiscal year ending 16, 17, so at that time it was 38.
Okay,
Right.
good, thank you. All right. That's it.
Well, I'm really just glad as heck to hear that we've come through this so well. I mean, the audits are never fun, but they're required every year, and, you know, to hear that we're on the right track and seemingly doing well financially is good news. Any other comments, questions?
No, I didn't have any material.
Thanks to Felicia for making this.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks to Julie.
Julie.
And Julie, yeah, Julie. She's the backbone there. Thank you
all right.
all.
Can I have a motion to accept the fiscal year 2016-17 financial audit and approve the comprehensive annual financial report?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Item.
The other day, the gentleman who was at the finance committee said that Julie was a workhorse.
Yes. I guess that's a compliment. Good night. Good night.
Number 7, item number 7 is consideration of adopting resolution 17-1535, determining the annual apportionment limits for fiscal year 2009-2010 through fiscal year 2016-17, and adopting the appropriation limit for the fiscal year 2017-18 budget. Can I have a staff report on this? This is a required event, annual.
And we have,
That we're just doing
Yeah.
for 2010.
Correct?
Yes.
We have a little catching up.
I had to read it a couple times, to be like, wait a minute, it's annual, but we haven't done it in a long time.
since
That's right.
2009.
And I think, you know, to that point, it is not something that has an adverse effect on the district. And so the fact that we haven't done it every year is really just it's a legally required reporting function of the district, but it's also a public sort of financing transparency formula, right? So you want to make sure that what you budgeted in appropriations, that you're collecting taxes relative to that, and you're not collecting more taxes than you're committing to spending. Came out of sort of the same period of time that you remember Proposition 13 and other sort of
legislative acts where the public was justifiably maybe concerned about agencies sort of hoarding money, from the public and not maybe reinvesting them back into the public good. So because the district's formula, all agency formulas are based on this per capita income and population and assessed valuation, the district just happens to, and capital projects, debt service is excluded, our user fees aren't part of the calculation, so our appropriation limit winds up to be like more than 80% lower than the maximum. So we're really not in any danger of running afoul.
Yes.
So again, it's just one of those, let's do the calculation according to the required formula, let's report it appropriately every year, and that's just a function of good legislation action, good legislative action.
And you had an expert help you.
Yes, I did. Mr. David Spillman is in the audience today. He's a retired finance manager and administrative service manager for the city of Calistoga, the city of Petaluma, actually the town of Mammoth Lakes, where Greg worked also previously, although I don't think you two overlapped.
Southern California City.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that.
So he was instrumental in helping Julie and me understand what the formula requirements are. And as I explained to the finance committee, the most important thing was I wanted David to be able to teach us how to do it ourselves. So that David, much as we appreciate his help and love him, we don't want him to have to do it every year. It's something that can be handled in-house.
Yeah, we want to do it every 5 years.
Yeah.
Should be. Have all the worksheets to do it.
And all the worksheets were provided, so, yeah, so thanks very much to his assistance in this process. It was difficult to get caught up without trading.
So, the fact is that the limit that we're allowed to collect is about 120% of what we're actually collecting. Is that right?
That is, I suppose, the inverse of looking at it.
We could go up. We're way under. We could do 4 more times.
Really?
We're 80% under the limit, so we're 4 times
We could go up 4 times.
above the limit, roughly, yeah. On page, there's a nice summary sheet as attachment B, and you'll see the current year appropriation limit for the district was calculated at about $5.8 million. And the formula, once you apply the formula, the appropriation subject to the limit is $1 million. So we're under the appropriation limit by $4.7 million.
Well, I'm confused.
We weren't 82%.
Is that a good thing or a
That's
bad thing?
That's a good thing. Okay.
Yeah, so we're way under.
Yeah.
Now, on attachment A, do you think we need to add a column, appropriation subject to the limit?
A column, appropriations subject to the limit.
Yeah, we've got the annual appropriations limit,
Right.
but the test really is the appropriation subject to the limit. So should we add a column to attachment A?
We could do, David, do you have an opinion about that? It's a resolution.
There are requirements
Ah,
under the state code that the board, the legislative body, adopt an annual resolution that does several things. Sets the growth, or establishes what the growth factors are applied to the limit. Sets the limit, the appropriation limit, and then also makes a statement as to what your appropriations that are subject to the limit are. So those items do need to be in, the resolution has items in here that comply with the requirements under state law. And you're setting the appropriations subject to the limit on the basis of the annual budget that you adopted. And that's part of the process. At the end of the fiscal year 17-18, as part of the year-end close, you'll be going through looking at what the actual revenues that you brought in, essentially your property taxes, and making another determination, a second determination, as to the appropriations or what you actually spent that were subject to the limit. It's at that point that the auditors, as part of an agreed to procedure, will come in and you'll have an additional letter attached to your next year's audit, which basically the auditors will come in and review the factors that were set up for the limit. So all of these things are all kind of tied together to keep you in compliance with state law. Does that answer your question?
No. That's not my question at all. I'm talking about for historical records, we've established the annual appropriations. I just want a quick answer. Should we put a column in there,
I'm sorry,
subject to the limit for the previous years, so that we show we meet it?
I think we could do that, David.
Or
is this a form?
Okay.
Right.
I mean, I know that we didn't do the,
Okay.
approvals and all that, but, we just show
Right.
for all these years we've had.
If you were a city that had property taxes, sales tax, transient occupancy tax, essentially had your limit, your appropriations subject to the limit were a lot closer and a lot more variable, my recommendation would be yes, we would have been more complex and had to have gone back and calculated each one of the limits to ensure that you didn't exceed the limit. I can safely say that the basis of the district, of how you're structured and the amount of property taxes that you receive versus the debt that you have, which is an excludable expense, and your capital improvements that you've been doing over the last several years, which is excludable, I can safely say that you've not come anywhere close to
The
exceeding
question
the
is,
limit.
why don't we show that on this column chart?
What-
Why don't we just put that column into the chart to show that?
Okay, well, we could.
Okay.
That's all.
It's
That's it.
not, that's not,
Because
let me maybe address it even more
we didn't have any debt
distinctly.
in.
That's
Hold
not
on a minute.
required.
Hold on a minute. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, I think we're safe.
I think I can maybe answer that question.
Yeah.
Which is to say, we could, but we don't have to.
Yeah.
And if we were to, it would require additional calculations
Yeah, okay.
to
We would have to go
compare.
back and calculate, look at essentially the actual expenditures
Uh-huh.
going back over the last 8 years.
Okay.
That's kind of a big deal.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a big deal. That's a process.
It's a long one.
These
It's a little
are,
more work and probably
And
not
from now
something.
on, it's not going to be hard.
Right, because we'll just do it on an annual
It was
basis.
just a theory.
one of the beauties about this, shouldn't use that term, but one of the features is that this is an annual legislative act,
Yeah.
which means that you come into it fresh and annually at the same time. It's whatever's appropriate at the time. Which means that you don't have to go back and reset or go back and establish where you were under the limit 5 years ago. The reason that we show this chart is that we do in fact have to do the calculations and do the projections to identify what is the actual limit, the appropriations limit. We have to go through those calculations. That's why we show this chart in here, is because you haven't set those appropriation limits in the past. You're not setting them individually. It's just you're setting, the way that we worded the language is that as board, you're setting the current appropriation limit of $5,634,000 on the basis of the following calculations, going all the way back to when the last time that you set the limit in 2009-10. So, following bouncing ball, connecting the dots.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Let me ask you this, moving forward, since we're doing it on an annual basis, would it make sense, do you believe, to take Tom's suggestion and add a column to show what's permissible and what was actually expended?
We could do that.
And it's not a big deal
every-
moving forward.
Right, every year.
yeah,
Do you agree with that?
yeah, that'd be appropriate.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
So that next year we show a column that shows how much we are under the appropriations.
And the previous year.
And the
Show the ones
previous
we
year.
have.
Yes,
Okay.
great idea.
Thank you very much.
You'll, if I may, you'll notice in attachment B that we have a graphic
Yep.
chart. And typically, well, what I've done in the past, in my agencies and other agencies I've been advising, is put about 4 or 5 years, where that chart shows what the appropriation limit was for that year, what the amount was that's subject to the limit, that's the middle bar, and then the amount under the limit. So that's where you would get a graphic display of your history. Actually having a chart that's attached to the bottom of attachment B, actually showing the numbers going back as far as you want, that's entirely appropriate.
Okay, good.
So we need to,
I think,
I just,
Go ahead.
thank you, Felicia, for cleaning house. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't think going back, we had one year where we were on the verge of bankruptcy, or we actually had to borrow money just to pay our bills. So, but thank you for catching that. I don't know how the audits did not see that either. I'm just blown away, really. Anyway, good for you.
is there any penalty for us catching up? For us not having done this?
Wait a minute, they didn't catch us either, so let's, no, there's that.
the state didn't tell us
Right.
about this either. The state-
Oh, right, the state legislative audit didn't catch this.
No.
Right, right, interestingly.
So is this
So
going
you
to be
get
in
a
our
star.
CAFR in the future?
I don't know if it'll be part of the CAFR, but,
No.
no,
it's-
but it will be.
Well, it's part of the
audit.
CAFR in terms of having the AUP, the agreed upon procedures,
Right.
in which the auditors do the analysis of your appropriation limit. That usually is part of the CAFR as one of the letters right behind the management letter.
Oh, okay. All right, so that'll be good to have on an annual basis as well.
So I take it, no, there's no penalty for not having done this?
No,
Something-
this is self-regulating. Again, it's a legislative act. And your action tonight will be subject to a judicial challenge by a party that has standing, which would be essentially a citizen within the district. And they have that ability to challenge it legally through the court for 45 days.
If we're over our appropriation, I would imagine. we voted down.
Well, if you're over, under, I mean,
Oh,
they don't define what the challenge is.
Okay.
But that's the only compliance issue.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution 17-1535, determining the annual appropriation limit for fiscal year, from fiscal year 2009-10 to fiscal year 2016-17, and adopting the appropriation limit for fiscal year 2017-18 budget.
Second. Okay, having a motion and a second, all in favor?
I have a quick
I'm
point
sorry,
of order.
any public comment?
Doug,
Yep.
is this a roll call if it's a resolution? No. Okay, sorry.
No public comments, so again, can I have a vote? All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Very good, motion is accepted. Number 8 is the consideration of the, David, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, David.
Consideration of approval of Ross Valley Sanitary District Financial Policies Book. Staff report, please.
Yes, so in response to the state audit, the board has adopted a number of financial policies over the last several years. And this item before you tonight is the compilation of all of those policies, as well as some recommended edits by staff and by the finance committee, and the addition of 2 new policies, one for internal controls and one for ethics. So the book has red line strikeouts for deletions and red text underlined for additions. Again, the finance committee provided staff with some excellent feedback, which was incorporated between the last finance committee meeting in October and the most recent finance committee in November. And the policy book is now ready for you as a board to accept and approve.
We made some couple of changes Monday. So go ahead, Tom, do you want to mention, you had a couple and I had, I think, one.
I have one.
Okay, so why don't you go first? Pam? Okay.
Oh, I talked to Felicia on the phone. Is there, we talked about being bonded for the check signing.
Yes.
But I can't remember, is it in, did you say it was in here, or is it a roundabout way, or?
It's not specifically listed in the
But
policy.
we're gonna do that, add that
What's the
to it,
question?
Whether or not the public officials are bonded.
Okay.
to sign checks.
Yes, and
So
so
we
we
had an issue,
do have current bonding for Director Gaffney and for the General Manager, Greg Norby. Greg has actually asked us, and Julie and I will be looking into bonding for other check signers, and we can report back out to you about that. The idea is for us to check with our risk pool, CSRMA, and to determine if we have other sort of insurance coverage that provides coverage against any misappropriations of funds by a check signer. So I think if the board's interested in receiving that information back, I will communicate that, probably to the general manager when he returns to the office. And if it's something that the board would like to include in the future policy update, we can do that as well.
Well, let me ask you this. When would or has, in the past, recent past, a board member signed a check?
I will refer to some of the other staff members in the audience.
It's been a long
I did not
time,
know.
but it used to be common. We used to have to sign the checks, and then Greg.
I don't think anybody on this board has signed a check.
oh yeah, I signed a $4 million check, I remember
Okay, I
that.
haven't.
It was something that Greg changed.
Good.
Originally, it was board members and the general manager that could sign checks, that was it. And so we had to get board members in every payroll, every vendor batch payrolls that we had. Then we changed, I think it was a resolution that included the managers, the operations and maintenance and infrastructure manager to sign checks, or the engineer back in that one.
So maybe we ought to have a board policy, that's a good point, a board policy that says that certain people can sign checks and they will be bonded.
Well, there's a
That's appropriate.
resolution there's a resolution for check signers.
Okay, but it probably should be.
So it could be added to.
Financial
It could be
policy.
added to the policy, absolutely. And as a substantive add, I would suggest that we look at that and any other substantive adds to the policy book
From time to time.
from time to time on a regular basis, yes.
I'm not sure. I think board members should be signing checks. Does anybody disagree?
No, I don't.
Do you?
Well,
I think you should-
I don't know what to think, because in the first 4 years of me being here, I signed hundreds of thousands of checks. I didn't
Hundreds of
even know the
thousands?
people, yes, I didn't even know the people I was signing the checks for.
Well, that's a good reason.
And then somebody brought up, like, are you bonded? And I'm like, bonded? And then you had to give your personal information. Then I found a bank account in San Anselmo that I had been put on a account with some money in it, and so I got kind of nervous. But that's why I just brought it. I mean, I don't know what we're doing anymore. So
Well, the practice is
just a
that our board
clarification.
members are not signing checks unless it's an emergency. And the reason why we
That's good.
would like to keep you guys is because we have only a couple managers in-house. And Felicia, it wouldn't be appropriate for her to sign checks, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to sign checks, and we have a small staff, so if Steve, Catherine, or Greg weren't available, we would like to have some backup. That's
Yeah,
kind of the only
like the
reason.
president, the
When I was the board president,
And
Yeah.
the treasurer.
I had to go to West America and sign all the
For
paperwork.
some payroll.
And it was just in
Oh.
case,
Mhm.
there was nobody around, and it was below a certain limit, I believe, and it was something that had to get signed and sent out, and I was able to go do that. But, you know, it was everything above board.
And our check signing process does require 2 signatures.
Right. That's what I
So
was
you
gonna point out
have,
also.
were you about to say that too?
Well, I just was remembering, like, Steve came to my chiropractor's office to get me to sign something one day. And on Saturday, I want to say, yeah. And I was like,
It's an
wow.
emergency, like
Yeah,
I
and
said.
that's one of the, you know,
Good
that's
thing
one of,
we're working on your check.
but two signatures are required. I mean, it sounds kind of wild, but to get 2 of our, how many managers? 3 managers, if on a Saturday, you know, like that was not possible. So it isn't totally crazy to have board member test signing.
But limited.
What was going on before was not, I think, generally accepted accounting procedures for check signing.
I think we should go through the
In order?
Yeah.
You want to start?
Well, I don't have anything until 8.3.
I have page 5.
Page
3.3. We mentioned 3.3, reporting unethical and fraudulent behavior. It reads, district staff shall report any observation in practice or appearance of a violation, and it goes on. We added the administration and board and district staff shall report. I mean, the board members are not exempt from reporting unethical behavior, and certainly the administration aren't. So we made that change. And that change also fits some of the other areas already had that. Board directors and district staff on 3.3, conflict of interest.
So we said board members and district staff, because district staff includes administration.
Okay, I have written down administration and board staff, but that's fine, or board members. But yeah, that's fine, they are, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And because it does say the rest throughout 3.6,
Yes.
3.10, 3.11, board directors and district staff shall uphold, for example, California Constitution Article 16, Section 6. So that fits.
Consistent with board directors.
Yes.
Your next one was what number?
Mine was not until 8.3.
Okay, let's go ahead and go there. And 8.3 is on page
20.
okay.
8.3, length of debt obligations, and I put the debt repayment period should not exceed
Yeah.
the expected useful life.
That's right.
Instead of should relate to?
Yeah, just should not exceed. And we always do that. And then, you know, our debt service coverage policy, in here, it says we're going to intend to maintain an average annual debt service coverage ratio of 150, but not less than 125. This is 8.4. And our bond covenant says 110. But it's, and the rating agency will look to see if we have a policy of 125 to 150. So this is fine the way it is.
Okay, the next one was 9.5, pages 24 and going on to 25.
And we were confused where that first bullet item, a maximum of 10%, I didn't know what it applied to, so we're going to correct that.
So a maximum of 10% of the portfolio may be vested in this kind of category will be indented and dashed, like the 2 indented dashed above it.
So it refers to money market
Yeah.
funds. Yeah.
Okay.
Then you have,
Go ahead.
well, I think 1010, the question was answered.
Yes, there was.
And the next one I have is 1033.
And that's on page 36.
And it says district manager, which I always think of as our general manager, so we changed that to department managers.
Yep.
And I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Well, it appears again in 1034, doesn't it?
Yep.
Department managers.
Yep.
Okay.
Who's the clerk of the board?
Marin.
So,
Is that it?
yeah, other than that, we decided that this was just a tremendous amount of work. And putting the whole policies in one place and assembling them. And we nitpicked it a lot.
Two finance committees.
But yeah,
Right.
two
Yeah.
finance committees, but it's a great piece of work.
And for living documents, so.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And
That's
it's
right.
gonna add-
No, I think that makes perfect sense. It should, I'm glad it was reviewed by the auditor as well. We're talking about the possibility of getting our bond rating raised, and this is the type of policy that's important, which is to have a policy.
They will ask us, the credit rating agencies will ask us for this, and we hand them a full policy.
Yep,
Yeah, that's,
especially one that's so well written, so I will commend staff for doing a good job on that.
Thank you. And thank you to the Finance Committee for your thorough review. It was very helpful. Actually, it felt very collaborative, so I appreciate that.
Do I have a motion on the Marin?
I move that we approve the district's financial policies with the edits. Is that,
Yes.
with the edits discussed this evening?
Second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And seeing none opposed, that passes. Being that it's not 6:30,
You could do your verbal reports.
pardon me?
Since the only reason you're coming back.
Verbal report on number 13.
You could do that,
Yeah.
so we need to wait till 6:30.
Love that. So let's move up number 13 and get a verbal report by board members, staff, and any requests for future agenda items. So, Pam, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. Take one and pass them, please.
I have another one.
Yeah.
Oops. So I attended the North Bay Watershed on November 3rd. It was very sad. Brad was there. I think I heard 5 of the board members lost everything in the fire. So the first part of the meeting was actually about a fire update. And so the big thing now is the toxic ash that's going to be coming with the rains. And that North Bay Watershed may be taking a more of a leadership role because of that. So erosion is going to be discussed. And who knows what it's going to do to the quality of the water. So like all the storm drains and all of that. So they're looking at the community pulled together with many agencies. And I believe on that toxic ash, that other handout that talks about it. Yeah, Brad just barely got out of there. He was within minutes of, I think he said right after he left. You could tell, I think he said when the Comcast shut off, he had checked the time when he left and checked the time when the Comcast was off. So, what else? Okay, so that was the first part of the meeting. The second part of the meeting, they're talking, like I said, about recovery. And I know if you've been looking at the news, but now that the water pipes have melted from the fire in various areas of those neighborhoods, so there's sinkholes now developing. It's really a mess, and there also is how are they going to do regrowth, like for vegetation, etc. And just hauling off all that debris is just a mess. I actually did 2 days of volunteer work up there, and I got some of the dirt on my shoes. I got home, the smell was just incredible, it was so toxic. So anyway, that was the first part of the meeting. The second is new technology is on the horizon for storms. Jennifer Krebs from Sonoma County did a presentation. They're going to get away from satellites and use little tiny radar, something. And it's called AQPI, Advanced Qualitative Perception Information, so that you'll actually can get an app on your phone and you'll know where it's going to flood really quickly, and the precipitation rate will be more accurate, and when storms are coming in. Very, very cool. San Francisco is a proposed site. Right now they have it in Santa Clara. And last was this great presentation by, let's see, who was that with? These maps that the North Bay Watershed District had given a grant to. And it's from the Bay Area Water Trail. And so 3 of the areas actually are within the North Bay Watershed because we're within a 3-county range. And they're really awesome. They're waterproof. They're mostly given to people that are non-motorized boaters because they don't want the habitats to be affected by people out in their boats or kayaks or whatever, especially birds, seals. That was a really nice presentation, I have to say. And they're just starting, this is like the first project, their first project with these maps. And I thought they were great to kind of look and see. They're really well done. You can kind of really visually get a good idea how there's so much really, we are in a lot of waterways really within our north of us. And there's a couple websites on there you can look at and that I put on the worksheet. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a water conference on April 6th, and I don't know all the information yet, but I'll bring that.
Excellent, thank you very much. Marin? Anything?
No.
Okay, either. Mike?
I'm good, thank you.
And I as well have nothing to report at this time. Any future agenda items anybody wishes to ask for?
Just the assessment of the solar feasibility for us. Thanks.
I do. Andrea, can you look into the legality of us having the sanitary district meetings not within the district service area?
I actually have, in fact. This question has come up a couple times.
Thank you.
You may have, there's certain circumstances, I don't have the law in front of me, but there's certain circumstances under which you may have your regular meetings outside of the boundaries, and one of those circumstances is when your headquarters is located outside of the boundaries, and that's where you do meetings. So I'll confirm it, because I looked months ago, I'm pretty sure the laws have changed, but it's my understanding that you may have your meetings at the current location.
Okay, with that, I'd like to ask to have an agenda item put on next agenda to discuss that topic. Does anybody agree with me on that?
Well, why?
Huh?
Why?
Because it's a lot easier for staff, because everything is there, because if we wanted to have somebody else from staff who happened to be in the building there come, it saves schlepping stuff here.
Okay.
There's a refrigeration unit there. It just makes it a lot easier for the staff. They don't have to schlep everything. They don't have to bring everything. They're already there.
Well, I don't know if it's the same thing.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't want to discuss it now. I want to see if we want to put it on the agenda.
I wasn't going to discuss it.
Okay.
I was just going to ask for another item.
Okay.
It is, I've asked this before years ago. I live way out in the end of the Cascades in Fairfax. Can they mail me my packet? Because I really don't think a worker on a Friday late afternoon to deliver my packet gets stuck in line.
We're using
I've asked this
on-call.
for years.
Well, we're using on-call staff, so it's not any additional expense. And if it were to be mailed, you may not get it until.
Well, I get CMSA packets always on time.
Okay. If you
But
want
I'm
to
just
do,
throwing it out there. I thought it was our staff.
why don't we
I mean,
do,
our,
next time,
regulars.
why don't we hand deliver it and mail it?
And
So-
see what
And
happens.
see how it goes.
okay,
That's a good idea.
sounds good.
Okay. Any public requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, I think we'll take a 15-minute break.
Oh, you couldn't review.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's good.
Oh, that's right. We have the
So
information.
let's review the monthly operational and maintenance matrix report.
I love this.
I do too.
One small SSO. Where was it, Steve? Degree.
I'm still dealing with the last one.
Okay.
I'd have to look into that, but it was real small. It was contractor error, I think, again, but I
How
can
many gallons?
meet that.
40.
40. Unfortunately, we had an emergency SSO, and that is right next to, this time.
Nokomis.
Nokomis Bridge.
Right next to Tom
McNamee's
McNamee.
house. Not Fort Greens.
Yeah,
It'll be on next month's report, yeah.
it will be. Okay, no other SSOs?
I didn't hear from him, so you must not be that mad.
I know, I'm sure he knows.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know. And nothing else on the operations report of interest?
Well, I calculated the volumes versus the wastewater treatment plant inflow,
Yep.
and we put it down as .0001, and it's actually .00004%.
I'll get it right next time.
Decimal. I thought you were gonna say I'll get it down next time.
Not this month.
The rain just rolled in, you know.
Are there any concerns about what they hit tonight?
What is hitting right now?
What is hitting?
Is it
Yes.
raining right
Oh, yeah, the wind rain.
More losing electrical.
now? It's hearing rain
Oh,
though.
yeah.
Not the rain, it's more the wind, the losing electrical. That's what I'm worried about.
Oh.
So we got guys ready to go, and I'm ready too.
Is that why you had to run out
Uh-huh.
earlier?
That was another alarm.
Power was out.
No, that was a smart cover. So we just wanted to make sure. So far so good, but 11 o'clock will be different.
Public comments? Okay. Monthly
No,
capital
Catherine.
program report from Catherine.
That was debris.
Yeah, well, you can see how much is under construction right now. Finishing up the 15, 16, middle of the 16, 17 rounds.
Yep.
The large diameter is going 2, 3 is 90%,
Design.
the design. And then pump station rehab, so another design project.
Yeah, and it's obvious, and I mean, as I mentioned before, and I think I mentioned it on Monday, it's an awful lot of work going on in San Anselmo. I think it's going really well. Obviously I live there, it's going on all over town. It hasn't gone absolutely positively flawlessly, but it's beyond a couple of delays, it's going exceptionally well. I was extremely pleased with the way the subcontractors are arranging traffic and safety and minimizing disruption to businesses. So I think it's
And remember we talked about that right in the main drag there,
San Anselmo.
San Anselmo Avenue, where the noise is, where it's noisy.
Oh, that's
The
right.
contractor rented the hotel, San Anselmo.
The only inn we
They
have
rented the
on
rooms there
In the front.
for their workers to live in, and they rented all the ones in the front that receive all the noise. Isn't that cool?
I think that's really thoughtful. Yeah. It was a nice touch. And Benedetto, the owner of the inn, didn't mind it one bit.
I can imagine.
Legal services down again, thank God. Back to about 15. And we talked at the financial meeting that it would be nice to have this also on an annual basis. We don't have to have it all the time because it's only annual. Is to show where the legal's been over the last 10 or 5 years. Yes, I think that'd be an interesting chart to see.
We also had a discussion about Central Marin's legal.
Yeah, but
15,000.
Well, isn't the county pay for it?
Yeah.
The county
council
pays for it.
services,
They
yeah.
don't pay for it.
Well, they pay for it. They pay the county.
You're saying to us that the entire legal bill of Central Marin Sanitation is $15,000 a year? I'm saying I find it hard to believe.
That's what
He
Jason
does,
said.
county council does, Jack Govey does not attend board meetings, does he?
No.
Yeah, so we have somebody sitting here all the
That's right.
time.
And the other thing is, they don't have any interface really with the public,
Right.
and we do.
I mean,
And the
it's a
number
little
of
bit.
contracts.
Well, let's sue them, we'll get their bill off.
We already did
We
that.
tried that, we did that.
How'd that work out?
And we got to pay it too.
It's after.
I mean, Jason also does their HR, right? So they have like, it works, but I would say they're not the kind of controls that we have to make sure.
And they don't have nearly as many projects in the ground.
No, and they have them on their
They
side.
have very
That's
few
correct.
and they're on their side.
Yeah, I mean, when you're reviewing contracts, and you have a legal counsel reviewing your contracts, which is critically important.
Well, I think they do that, yeah.
Okay.
Looks like people are coming in to move
Well, you know
on.
what, I am now going to call a 5-minute recess.
Good deal.
Okay. Nobody else? And are you good? Okay, we're back from break, and I'm now going to officially adjourn.
We don't have Pam.
No, it's okay. She'll be here because we're adjourning.
Oh.
I'm not re-adjourning. We're adjourning the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board meeting. We'll start it.
Adjourning or?
Adjourning because we're going to open up the Ross Valley Public Finance Authority.
We're taking a recess. I mean, well, it's a technicality, but it's an adjournment, but you're gonna need.
I'm going to open up the Ross Valley Public.
No, I understand, but it's not a permanent adjournment
No.
of your board, your district board meeting.
We're going to adjourn.
Like a,
That's what I said. He's
or a
correcting me.
recess, or, I mean,
Recess.
it's a temporary adjournment.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll accept that. Even though Pam's not back just yet, that's fine. I'm going to recess the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board meeting, and I'm going to open up the Ross Valley Public Financing Authority meeting. Pam is missing for just a minute, she'll be back. And with that, do I have to call the meeting to order? And I did call the meeting to order, do I need a roll call?
Is it on the agenda?
Then I'm going to wait for just a couple minutes. So please bear with me. We'll be right back after these messages.
Film at 11.
Have an ad for Zorelto. We could approve the agenda.
Okay, again, I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Ross Valley Public Financing Authority, and I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Forstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Biggs, here, Scylla, here, Gaffney,
Here,
Ellie.
Here, I'd like to ask for approval of the agenda.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or to ask for future agenda items. Members of the board, the public may ask for a discussion on any topic not on the agenda. None, seeing none. Consideration of approving engagement agreement with Downey Brand LLP for legal services associated with the upcoming bond sale staff report, please.
I'll cover that very briefly.
Thank you.
The Ross Valley Public Financing Authority was created by JPA and has a set of bylaws that indicate that the general counsel for the district also serves as the general counsel for the authority, which is fine. But from my firm's perspective, the authority is not a client. And so for me to sign the opinion letter saying, I am general counsel for the authority, I just technically need to have an engagement agreement so that I can do the work and then bill the authority, also known as the district, for
Okay.
the work. So it's essentially a formality.
Okay.
It's exactly the same agreement.
It's exactly the same agreement as the one with the district.
And does anybody have any questions about that? Does anybody in the audience have any questions about that? Can I have a motion to,
I motion that we approve the attached engagement agreement with Downey Brand LLP for legal services associated with the upcoming bond sale.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Agenda item number 5 is consideration of adopting resolution PFA 17-1537, authorizing the issuance of wastewater revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $27 million in connection with financing certain wastewater system improvements, authorizing and directing execution of an indenture of trust, an installment sales agreement, and certain other documents authorizing the negotiation for the sale of bonds, and approving an official statement, and authorizing other related actions. May I have a staff report on
Yes,
that?
I'll provide you just a brief staff
Yep.
report on this item, which is to say that the board approved the fiscal year 17-18 budget with a 5-year financial strategy to obtain $25 million in revenue bonds this fiscal year to fund capital projects. In September, the board approved contracts for financial advisors, Marin company here in the audience, and for bond counsel, Hawkins Delafield, also here in the audience, and available to answer questions by the board. The functions of the, I'm sorry, I keep saying the board, but I should say the Public Financing Authority. So the Public Financing Authority actions tonight include approval of this resolution, which by its adoption has several actions, including approval of an installment sale agreement, a bond indenture, an official statement, a disclosure letter, the underwriter services, and services of a bond trustee. And upon approval of these actions, the sale date of the bond is anticipated to be December 14th, with the closing date of December 20th. Again, the bond team, as we've been calling them, the 007 bond team is available.
Oh,
It
took me a second.
Jim Gibbs, Martha Boyovich, Sean Tierney, and Ron, I'm sorry, I don't call your last name. Wolf, all available here to answer questions, as well as staff and your recently appointed authority counsel. Legal counsel. And that concludes my talk.
But we also have a bond attorney.
Our bond counsel, yes, Sean Tierney, yeah.
Right. Term of art, bond
Term of
counsel,
art.
or bond attorney.
And disclosure counsel.
Yes.
And right, disclosure counsel. Again, something I'll refer to these experts in the room to answer the detailed questions about the process of the bond issuance and the sale.
Well, the finance committee met with these people
Yes.
too, and so we
Well, this is not new news. We've spoken about this. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can
address
say a
it?
few
Yeah,
words.
thanks, I wish you would.
Kind of summarize what's on the agenda and see if you have any questions. This will be the third bond issue that's done, or you have two outstanding bond issues that are, the documentation is the same in its the basic way that it operates, where you have the authority issuing bonds, and the district is really the obligated party, as you know.
Yep.
But the authority functions to help you do the financing and issue bonds. Basic sewer revenue covenants and financing where your revenues are pledged towards the repayment of the debt, your net revenues. There's revenue covenant to maintain your net revenues basically sufficient with a little bit of coverage to pay the debt service. You have very good coverage, that shouldn't be an issue. There's some limitations on incurring additional debt, but again, you have very good coverage. You have flexibility there if you want to borrow more, including state loans.
State law.
Yeah, which could be financed on a similar basis. We've engaged an underwriter who will work with Jim and Martha's help to take the issue to market and get the best rates possible. Market's very good right now. Your credit's very good. We're hoping for an upgrade maybe. We'll see. Can't guarantee that. But even your rating on your last bond issue is very strong, and your finances are stronger than that when you did that issue. Yeah,
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm touching on your subjects, but those are,
You're doing a good job.
yeah. Now, Jim will speak about, he'll speak about the legal aspects. But so, we have two resolutions, the authority resolution and the district resolution. You know, combined, they approve the transaction and the documents. There's really nothing new. We're gonna net $25 million. And so the 27 gives the leeway for the costs and some other, you know, market fluctuations, but it'll be, at the end of the day, you'll put 25 million in the bank for the project. The only new thing different from last time, although I think we did this on the one before that, is you're negotiating with the underwriter.
Yeah. I'll let Jim talk about that.
Yeah, so I think that's my summary. I'm happy to answer questions or let Jim speak a little bit.
If our credit rating goes up, which we're hoping that it does, how will that sway the numbers?
That's the question I was left with.
Yeah, good. That's a perfect
Yeah.
segue for the financial. I turn it over to your financial advisor.
Have you calculated that, Jim? Oh, yeah, the underwriter calculated.
Exactly.
So you can do his stuff.
Promise.
Yeah, so it should result in annual debt service of probably about $110,000 lower than would have been if we didn't succeed in getting an upgrade. Right now, we're at A+, we hope to get to AA-, and the benefit is substantial.
How is that determined? And the credit rating, who comes up with that?
Okay, we're applying, there are 3 credit rating agencies, companies that issue these ratings. We're applying to one of them, Standard & Poor's. And they are waiting the wings for us to send them all the documents that you're adopting tonight. And we'll see how it goes. They already rate your 2 previous issues. They are familiar with the credit. And, you know, this is fun. You have a great story about how you've been, you know, coming from a low point.
The bad news
and
You'll have a telephone conference call with them, right, for the rating call.
Yes, and we'll actually get, you know, the gang of us locals together. Actually, the rating analyst who's leading the process for them is actually in Colorado. They are really busy, you know, right now. So
We're not getting Tim Tony.
Tim Tony is on the team, but there's a guy named Malcolm Silva who's out of Denver.
So Chloe
Yeah, Chloe is in the loop, but she's,
I know her.
yeah, and she worked with us last time. She works with just about everything. The tax bill is basically intending to eliminate the ability to do advanced refundings, which has spooked a lot of issuers around the country, and they're charging in the market with bond issues, and so.
Right, and all tax exempt bonds on behalf of 501c3s. So hospitals, universities, museums.
They would be exempt from tax write-offs?
So for the
So
Russians,
we should be able to do tax exempt bonds under the House's bill and all affordable housing. So it's 30 or 40% of the market.
so that
So they're all in a rush.
That could hurt us.
No, it's helping you.
It's helping us because the tax bill is not passed.
Well,
So this will be an issuance prior to
it's complicated because investors are viewing it as these might be the last tax exempt bonds we can ever buy. So rates have plummeted, but then supply is expected to be massive in the next 6 weeks. So, I don't know, that's where Jen
we don't know.
comes in.
We don't know.
Next year, rates could plummet more or go up, I don't know.
So there is a, I mean, if the market gets jammed and rates jump up, you know, you don't have to sell your bonds to avoid a calamity. In December, you could wait until January, we expect, and so that is a possibility.
So we probably aren't going to do an advance refunding, which is refunding prior to the call. But Jim mentioned that we might shorten the call period. Remember, we can't call our bonds for 10 years. That's all of our bonds. But Jim's going to, and Martha are going to analyze, would we get hurt if we go to a shorter call? And some other things you mentioned to us, Jim, I think are really, that was one of them. You analyzed the difference between a double A minus and a plus, 110 a year, which amounts to like over $2 million for the life of the bond issue.
Right.
What else?
Well, we may, we're looking into having a sort of special marketing effort to your ratepayers. To see if individually if they would like to buy some of these bonds. And it looks like, that would be quite feasible. So we'll be working with the staff to set
So
up.
we're going to notify people in this area if they want to buy our bonds. And when it's, good information about us.
Raymond James
Somebody
puts our story
actually,
up.
last time we sold bonds, somebody I swam with said, oh, I see you guys are selling bonds. And I was like, I didn't even know you knew I was on the board.
They do.
So, it sort of ends in a nice touch. And Raymond James let an 800 number they could call and, arrange the transaction. It'll happen quickly, because we want to get all those orders in before we open up the issue in full to the big institutional one.
It would have been harder last time because we didn't know who the underwriter was. Remember, we didn't pick an underwriter. We went out for bid.
You were so excited about that,
I
right?
know. Jim says that in this market, you got to remain flexible and do the best thing. That we bid competitively bid the underwriting fee, and gives it about
It's about a third of a percent.
a third of a percent, so a very low fee. And then they know they've got the issue, and they can work hard on it. And that the underwriters are feeling risk if they're holding bonds, so they don't do a higher fee if they don't have the bond issue right away to sell. And so that's the story, right, Jim?
That's
something like that.
in a nutshell. That's correct.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding. And we did ask the financial advisor and staff if we could view the bidding live.
Well, let's go before that. We also asked for a financial subcommittee, and the public's welcome to come, a meeting, a little tutorial the day before the bond sale.
That's true.
So there'll be a little tutorial in financial subcommittee, which is the 13th of December?
We actually haven't pinned down the date. We're working on the calendar.
Well, the sale is
It'll
Tuesday
be,
tonight.
the sale is the 14th. We actually need the 13th to really sort of
So
work.
but
So it'd
the
be
sale
the
is
12th.
what day of the week? Was it Thursday?
It's Thursday.
So we were talking about on Monday of that week, having a financial
Right.
subcommittee meeting and having a little tutorial event. The public is welcome.
See, I was wondering if we could notice it. Maybe we don't want to, well, we notice
We
it.
should notice it.
And then everybody can come.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
I mean, not to have a notice board meeting.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there was, that idea was expanded upon too, to include, if the board was interested in kind of, and I think Jim, you mentioned this phrase, which I think is a good one, maybe a study session to, do a little market analysis and a little, informational discovery of the different kinds of bond issuance that are available. And so,
Yeah.
Jim, if you want to.
The various terms.
I want to turn it around, and I think that that's exactly what we should do, because you mentioned that somebody spoke to you last time, and you told me even though they were on the board, we're going to issue a third bond. We're going to have questions, and I think it's great that the board members have as much knowledge and education about this bond release as is possible. And so I'd like to note it as a board meeting have us all there, or is there supposed to, can we
You
come?
could perhaps,
And of
and I'll discuss this with Greg when he returns, maybe do it at your December 5th board meeting as an
That's
agenda
too
item.
early.
No, it's too early, it's not, no, because I
Oh.
don't want it to be, no, I'd rather it
Okay,
be on.
separate.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that way, of
We've
course,
got-
we're noticing it, the public's invited to attend, I don't know if anybody will, but they're welcome to attend, and maybe, if we're doing a public outreach, that can be, it's like, and come to the open house tutorial on the, whatever the Monday is.
Get a free bond.
Well, no, but we have those coffees in the back, so you can get a cup of coffee and get the tutorial.
Would that include this buy your own bond? I don't quite understand that.
In other words,
I don't
you know,
understand that.
bond purchasers buy these bonds. We could have purchasers within our district buy the bonds. The board cannot buy bonds, right? Bond
Are
council.
you kidding me?
We can't buy bonds.
Why not?
Because we're
I'm a
broke.
citizen.
Oh,
I
conflict.
know, but I could not,
Let's ask bond council.
yeah.
It's a conflict, right? If you-
Yeah, it's probably not a good idea. I mean, I don't know that it's expressly prohibited, but, I mean,
You're setting the rates.
Yeah, it might not be technically a conflict, but it might not optically be the best idea.
As the saying goes, the perception of.
Well, you know, as a board, we're setting the rates
Yeah.
that support the bond issue and pass, you know, certain, whatever measures that probably have an impact on the bond issue. So I think it's,
yeah.
I think it's not, okay.
I mean, technically, you may be benefiting financially from a decision you make.
That's right.
However, you would benefit the
Not
same way that
sure.
every other bond holder,
It's
every
a
other
general.
buyer would. So technically, it might not be a conflict for which you would have to recuse yourself, but it's strange enough and complicated enough that it probably isn't worth it.
And if we
No,
have just
I
a general
understand.
board meeting, we have to have at least 3 of 5 of us show up to make a quorum at that point.
and we have to have a quorum, that's
Like
like
3 of 5.
Well, if you're gonna have a special board meeting, I mean, you won't have any action items. You're just gonna do a workshop. So it technically may not end up being a board
It
meeting,
would be a
That-
workshop.
but you could do a workshop. But you should agendize it as such. And then, even if only 2 of you show up, you could still sit around and talk about it and look through
The
it.
reason we don't want it earlier is because I think that Sperry Capital is going to be doing these calculations for real. And so we want to see the logic for it. You know, if we get it pretty close, these are what you're going to do, you know?
Right,
Yeah.
right. We'll use real market data. We'll talk about, you know, trade-offs that may be involved in deciding what the coupons are on individual bonds and so forth, so.
And again, on the day of the sale, we talked about us watching the sale live. And since it's to the board, can we also invite the public to that?
Okay, would be another
It
workshop.
takes like 5
Would be,
It happens really fast.
It does, but
but that isn't probably the best thing. I think the workshop, well, they can come if they want.
that's what I mean, and it's 5 minutes, and, you know, Martha mentioned it's 5 minutes, so we'll probably miss it, so that's fine, but we invited people, and we went up in the interest of open government.
Well, frankly, if a quorum of you is gonna be there,
Right.
discussing or doing something related to the district, then you maybe should agendize it.
Okay, well then, shall we do that?
On the same.
Well, I'm for the workshop to sign
Oh,
out.
wait a minute, the council just said that if we're going to all attend, or if we are invited and we're allowed to, and we want to attend the bond sale, then technically we need to at least notify,
That would constitute a meeting under the Brown Act, for which an agenda and notice is required.
so let's do that.
What, I suggest we take a straw poll of how many people can really show up at these precise times.
It's 5 minutes.
No, it isn't.
I know, but then also,
Yeah.
what,
It
would
goes on
we waive
for
our,
hours.
would we waive our board fees, or are we gonna be paid nearly $300 for that? 5 minutes?
No, I wouldn't. I
Right.
think that's why I like
That-
the
that's
workshop.
what we're much like.
What's that?
Well, the order of your action.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's fine.
see, I don't think we should get paid for that.
That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But I want to, if we're, first off, if council is saying if we attended more than 2 of us, we have to notice it and agendize it.
Well, I'm all for noticing an agenda.
So if we call it workshop, we're not paid, that's fine, I don't know about that. Does anybody have a problem with
Well, then we have to vote on, yeah, we're going outside of the policy.
that? No, we're not. A workshop is not outside the policy.
You get paid for any.
Notice
We can
meeting.
vote on the next
I mean, I don't care either way. I just want to know when it is and
All
I
right,
don't know if I
I
can
feel
go.
like the cart is ahead of the horse here, or still not.
We have another meeting.
Do we have substantive
Why don't we
discussion
talk
about
about,
this?
why don't we
Because
talk about this on the next agenda item?
All of this depends on us doing this.
Right, and we'll also, could we have another agenda, we have another official meeting before that?
We do.
And would that give us enough time to notice the public?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, for a special meeting, you'll need 24 hours.
Thank you very much. Okay, so, moving forward, where are we now? We did go kind of sideways.
That's okay.
Okay, that's
I have a question.
Yep.
How will it be determined that whether bond insurance at 120K is needed? It says if needed here.
Only if it's to your advantage.
I see.
So you spend 120,
To
but
save.
you get a reduction in debt service is way more than that.
And the extra 2 million, is that is, why do we need 27 to get out 25?
Because we want 25, but there are fees involved with selling a bond.
2 million worth?
No,
Well,
no.
the biggest portion of the difference between 25 and 27 is actually putting cash into a reserve fund. And we put that into this calculation in case, for some reason, you end up needing to do that. You have to have a reserve fund. We expect that we're going to put an insurance policy in there instead of cash.
Okay.
But if, you know,
That's
if
unavailable.
the insurers, you know, don't offer
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's something that will be determined the day of? Like,
No, it'll be determined a few weeks from now.
Okay.
You're gonna take bids for that
Yeah.
coming up.
And we could have discount on.
Are you allowing discount bonds? Are you allowing for discount to have bonds being?
You can do anything. Yeah. We don't,
Which is what happened last time, right?
That's what,
Yeah.
that would be. you'd need-
What did you just say?
Well, I was
well,
just,
we take, yeah.
he just, I think Sean was just saying whether that, or Tom was saying that whether they're,
It could be a
the
discount.
27 million included whether for discount bonds, and he's counting all possibilities.
Yeah,
That's the
this is
maximum
another
we can-
reason that if you sell the bonds at a discount, then you have to increase the borrowing.
Because we're trying to get $25 million.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the hard and fast.
And that's a max, right?
Yeah.
That's, yeah. 27.
Not to, 27 is max. It's written right in there, not to exceed 27 million.
We're hoping that we sell less than 25 million. And we get it, and if that's the most efficient.
Yeah,
That's what we got last time,
We'll get
right?
into that in the workshop.
We got a premium last time.
That's right.
Okay, okay. When you said discount, I was like, didn't we get that last time? But no, it's premium, yeah. Great.
Okay, so we have, the finance committee has been through the resolution. There's lots of things. We made some comments, and most of them were incorporated. We gave you a few
Okay.
comments.
On the official statement.
Yeah, I don't think we are turning that around now. We didn't incorporate those since the finance committee meeting, sorry.
Oh, I don't care about that, as long as you consider them.
Yeah.
What we did was we discussed a number of small things, and some of them were rejected. So, as long as you,
Oh, we're gonna, we're working on it.
the same as the documents, I think we are.
Would you characterize them as material?
No, not material. But clarifying, I would classify it.
Tom had some good questions, and there were a few things that we're gonna change, but names and some things on biographies.
Labels,
and-
I've always been labels.
and,
Well, so what? Are you ready for-
Yeah, I am.
Okay, well,
Now, is there any more questions or concerns, and is there anything from the public?
I just want to say that this is, again, all work that is required from us by the State Regional Water Quality Board that we have told them we are going to do, and that is why we need to go out and sell these bonds to fulfill our legal obligation, not just broadly, but based on a cease and desist order and what we've told the water board we're going to do.
Thank you. That's
I mean, and I've been saying that since we told people we were going to have to raise rates and, you know, even just the 6 or 7% that we do, and go out and sell a whole bunch of bonds. It is not just because we think it's a good idea, we are actually legally required to do it at this pace.
It's
and
also
in
a
this
good
way.
idea. It's a good
It
idea.
is a good idea, but yeah, but it is not like we just willy-nilly decide to sell bonds every couple of years.
This amount of bonds was actually scheduled 3 years ago. So
Right.
I remember, and we broke it into 2 phases. So this is the
That
second part of
good.
it.
And actually selling the bonds is another way to finance the work that we're doing, instead of raising the rates more, until we can potentially get to a pay-as-you-go model, which would be ideal. But we're making up for lost time.
And having said all that, some of that, as you mentioned, was before I came on the board, but I also want to reiterate that this bond sale is not something we've taken up tonight. We've been talking about this for a year,
Yeah.
you know, in a regular basis.
It's in our budget this year.
Yeah.
It was in our previous budget plan.
Yep. And we've been speaking about it at numerous board meetings. No other questions?
I want to just mention though, I think 18 or 19, we're done with the state quality.
State revolving funds.
Yeah, I think that's our last year under them.
What?
Yeah, last year. So I didn't think we would get to this much in bonds, but here we are, and I'm hoping this is the last round. As I was looking at the payoff date, was it 2040, 40 something?
2043?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, actually, these are 20, probably 25 bonds.
Yeah.
So that's 40.
And it's sad that when I first came on the board in 2009, we had a lot of money, and then we plummeted. So here we are, and we're doing really well, so that's
Well,
the good news.
The key is, in 2009, we weren't doing anywhere with this board, and this agency wasn't doing anything remotely like the groundwork that's going on now and is planned for the next couple of years. This is going to lead, in my opinion, to a reduction in I&I, which is critical for CMSA and for this district and for the ecology and environment of this district. So I think we're doing the right thing. I also think, as you mentioned, we're required by law to do the right thing. It's a shame that the law has to come in and tell us what to do, but that's where we find ourselves.
Well, and one more thing, in stark contrast to when, slightly before I came on the board, when this district was paying millions of dollars in fines for spills of sewage into waterways. We had last month 140-gallon spill. I'm looking back at Steve because I'm proud of it, and it's their work, as a result of some debris from a contractor. And so we are just nowhere near having the fear, I say this even though it's raining right now, that we're going to spill and get a fine. We just completely turned around from that perspective.
But even if we weren't under a legal obligation to do it, these projects that we're doing really are not optional. And we have to get this stuff done to take care of the pipes that are over 100 years old in some cases. And we can't get to a pay-as-you-go until we get
to a situation
where we believe that the entire system, I mean, I read a thing when I was at CASA that said, look, it's not a perfect system. You're going to spill. There's going to be something that's going to happen. You have to prepare yourself so that when the State Water Regional Control Board asks you, how come you weren't prepared for this? You say, yes, we were, and here's what we did to mitigate the circumstances. So even though we may be out from under their authority in a couple of years, the work that we're doing is not optional. We have to get this stuff done.
I'd like to add one more thing. Just in my business, which for those who don't know, I sell restaurant point of sale systems, which are sometimes many terminals, and we often offer a maintenance contract. So people pay an annual maintenance fee and we come in and repair things. But if we go into a place that hasn't had a maintenance contract, we don't offer a maintenance contract. We offer to go in and clean everything and repair everything and bring everything up to snuff. And then we offer a maintenance contract. You're maintaining the equipment, you're not repairing. We're not at a maintenance, which is pay-go. We're not at pay-go. We're at fix everything. And that's where we are, and I'm really proud of this agency. I think it's been doing a great job in the last few years, especially the last like year and a half. Really.
I mean, that's what we get.
Since I came on board. With that, I take a motion. Okay.
As a nurse in the community for 35 years, this was my biggest thing to be here for health. And I think that's where the foundation of all is from the 18th century. So I'm really glad that health is coming back. It's an expensive health, but it's a must do.
All right, do I have a motion?
Wait, they want to say one more thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim?
Yeah, should we bring up the matter of funding of the lateral repair?
Yeah, oh, please, yes, that's great, thank you. We did talk about
One
that.
thing I forgot. So in 2014, we took a portion of the bond proceeds and were allowed to use 5% of the bond proceeds for this purpose, to set aside and make grants and loans to private residences to fix their laterals, the connection from the house to the street. And we can do that again.
Catherine's getting
Sorry. So that's.
And we talked about that, and we were encouraging that policy because we want to do everything we can to have people repair these laterals. That's,
So a consideration for the board is the way that I thought we might do it, is if we get discounted bonds, and I mean premium bonds, we get premium bonds, and we can sell less than $25 million. In fact, maybe we'll sell $24 million. Of course, the interest, will be higher to sell premium bonds. But we might consider adding $300,000 onto the principal amount, so we get $25.3 million, and dedicate $300,000 to our lateral program, which is expanding. And we are funding it we're funding that with grants. But we could supplement it with, I was thinking $300,000 on the condition that we have premium bonds. What's the thought of that?
Well, that means that we'll be paying.
I agree with the idea. I don't agree with the premium bonds. I think it's a great idea to set aside some money to expand our lateral program, regardless of whether they're premium bonds or.
Right, is it right to the 25 million exactly, or can we,
No,
and is there any restriction on use, are the laterals of capital like the other stuff?
Well, there's a 5% restriction, so 5% of 25 million.
Yeah, maybe a little less than that. Yeah.
Did we do this last time?
Yes.
5%.
We did it before.
Yeah.
Okay.
600,000.
And how much did we do before?
We did $1.5 million, I think.
On what was the?
It was 30 million, so you set aside $1
But how
million.
much for the laterals did we take?
$1.5
$1.5 million.
About 1.5.
But I was just suggesting that we dedicate 300,000.
In addition to the 1.25 or one and.
No. Just $300,000.
Have we
Not $1.5 million.
Have we allocated the 25 already? Well, I mean, is it necessary to do an if we get the premium then?
We have allocated the $25 million that we needed
To
for
the
projects.
penny?
And so, but
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But to the $300,000 mark?
It's, the $25 million is projected number to spend towards capital improvement projects. We could carve out $300,000 or $500,000 or $600,000 of that, or whatever 5% of $25 million is.
but then it takes away from our projects. So I was thinking, I wanted to do a dedication.
Well, it's a projection. I don't know that it's that specific.
Well, it isn't that specific.
And then also, does that require a motion of the board to say, if we get premium sale, then we'll go for more than?
Jim?
So we'd be happy to come back to your next finance committee meeting, which is before the bond
Right.
sale, and give you some thoughts.
And then we'll still have a second
And
board meeting to talk about it.
And we've already authorized up to 27 million.
Yeah.
We'll do
Right.
that.
You'll
And
have
Martha,
you'll have plenty of.
I'm just saying, I think there's enough wiggle room that we could intend to do that without making it this conditional thing.
I
That's,
think you're
You're
right.
right.
and I think that's what Greg would say. if he was-
Okay.
And that's kind of what we should say.
All right.
And I'll let Jim count, and then we'll have real numbers to see the impact.
Right. So, right. I have a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution.
PFA, public finance authority.
17-1537.
You're on this one, right here.
Yeah,
That's where
okay,
you are.
17-1536, approving, authorizing, and directing execution of certain financial documents. Am I right?
Read this one, you never just, we're on
Well, it doesn't matter.
the, no, we're on the finance authority.
We're on the
No,
authority.
we're in the finance authority meeting.
Okay, I move that we adopt resolution 17-1537, authorizing the issuance of wastewater revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $27 million in connection with financing certain wastewater system improvements, authorizing and directing execution of an independent conjunction trust, an installment sale agreement, and certain other documents, authorizing negotiation for the sale of the bonds, including an official statement authorizing public related action.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, let me undo that. Any comment from the public? $27 million, I don't want somebody complaining because they're not finished speaking. Anybody on the public? No, then can I have a motion?
I move that we adopt
And a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No, the motion now carries. With that, I'm adjourning the Ross Valley Public Financing Authority meeting, and I am reconvening the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board. And I now have, do we have to do that again?
Agenda item 9.
9, that's it.
That's it.
Now, agenda item 9. We've just gone through everything. Is there anything else we want to talk about because it's on the Ross Valley Sanitary District?
It's identical.
It's identical.
Except for
It is.
the bond, except for district council.
Is now our district council again, not the bond council. Well, no, he's the bond council.
Why do we do this again?
Because
The
the
board's
authority is a separate entity that's passing a separate resolution from the district. So when you just convened as the authority, and now you're reconvening as a district.
Having said that, does anybody want to discuss this again? Any public comment? I'll take a motion.
I move that the board adopt resolution number 17-1536, approving, authorizing, and directing execution of certain financing documents and directing certain related actions in connection with financing up to $27 million to be used to finance certain improvements to the district's wastewater facilities.
I second.
I'd like to remove the word wastewater. It's not in it.
Well, it's right here.
I'm looking at my item number 9.
Oh, he's just reading it from a slightly different place.
Look at here, it's over here.
He's reading it from the stuff that was in his other
All right, do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with that, I am adjourning.
Before you adjourn, can I just confirm that when you have your special meeting on the 5th, you will then decide on the other dates of your special meetings?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Oh, no, that's a good, yeah, we
Wait,
determined that.
wait. December 5th is a board meeting.
Yes, that's right. That
It's
board
not
meeting
a
will
special
decide-
meeting. It is because it's not, it is technically a special meeting because it's not your regular, it's not a regular
You're right,
meeting.
you're right. Yeah, okay.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks. Good meeting.